live on, in, and above it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. Miigwech. Council, any declarations of pecuniary interest? I'm seeing none, and so we will move on to our first motion. And I have moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that Council adopts the planning agenda of September 12th, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right. And with that, we go on to our Planning Act public meeting, which means I get to speak to you for a moment. This morning, there's a public meeting scheduled for one proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the clerk will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of the public meeting was circulated for the proposed amendments being considered. The clerk will also advise of the appeal procedures. Next, staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the bylaw and provide any other information that is relevant to the application, and the clerk will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the amendments being considered. Please be respectful of time and be concise with your comments. All commentators are requested to state their name and address and sign in on the sheet provided. After the public discussion, the public meeting will be closed. Council will then have an opportunity to provide comments for clarification. I now declare this meeting to be a public meeting pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act to deal with the following amendment. Z 23-11 for 951 Honey Harbour Road. To our clerk.
Notice of the public meeting was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 to 800 meters of the property subject to the proposed applications, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the applications. These notices were sent at least 30 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed applications and a key map showing the location of the properties or a description of the lands to be affected by the proposed amendments. Other relevant information may have been provided. These circulations were all provided in accordance with provisions of the Planning Act and the Township of Georgian Bay official plan. Members of the public are advised at this point that unless they make an oral or written submission to council before council makes a decision on these applications, that any subsequent appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal may be dismissed by the tribunal. Anyone who wishes to be notified of council's decision respecting the proposed zoning bylaw amendments must submit a written request to the planning department.
Thank you. And with that, to our planner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff, everyone online. My name is Jeff Pratt. Oh, I apologize. Perhaps that didn't go out. Maybe I should start again. Do you want to?
Can we do a little microphone test? Who's advising us of this? Okay. Well, I'll ask our counselors online. Can you hear what I'm saying? Yes. Okay.
Can you hear me?
And me.
Sorry for that interruption. If you wouldn't mind going ahead, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I will start by sharing my screen. The owners of the subject lands applied to rezone their property to satisfy conditions of a consent to sever. Their property is municipally known as 951 Honey Harbour Road and is located as shown on the key map here. And I'm uncertain why I've got, thank you. The consent includes lands to be retained around the existing residences, as well as lands to be severed in the south. The subject lands are on the edge, the outer edge of a 500-meter radius surrounding a non-operating, non-municipal waste disposal facility. This matter was considered at length by the Committee of Adjustment, and both a D4 landfill impact assessment and a peer review were considered, and the committee found that the landfill impact submitted in support of the application was acceptable. The purpose of the application is to rezone the subject lands given the consent known as B2203 regarding 951 Honey Harbour Road by the Bressettes, where the part to be retained is rezoned from residential type 1 R1 zone to the R1 zone, the environmental protection zone EPW, and the environmental protection wetland exception zone to be numbered after today's public meeting, if the passage is given. The severed lands is to be rezoned from R1 zone to the R1 exception zone to be numbered after today's meeting should passage be given, the EPW zone, and the EPW exception zone. The effect of the application protects wetlands by including them in the EPW zone and buffering the wetlands by including those buffers in an exception to the EPW zone on both the retained and severed lands, while allowing the residential use of the dry lands to be retained and severed, except the land to be severed having only 56.41 meters lot frontage instead of 60 meters, which is the reason for the exception to the R1 zone. As you've already heard, public notice was given as required. The proposed rezoning is in keeping with the purposes of the provincial policy statement, and given the D4 landfill impact assessment and environmental assessment provided with the consent application with the District of Muskoka Municipal Official Plan. The township's official plan also includes the property within the rural area and within some unclassified previously and some D6 wetlands. And therefore, again, given the environmental impact statement and the D4 assessment, it is consistent with the official plan for the township. Lastly, the R1 zones and the R1 exception zones are very consistent with the planning for the area. And again, the specific reason for the EPW and EPW XX zones is to address the protection of the wetlands identified by the environmental impact statement. Therefore, I recommend that council approve and pass the zoning bylaw amending our current zoning bylaw to allow for the proposed rezoning of the subject retained lands and severed lands as shown on this map. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a very subtle note in front of me that suggests I should check with the clerk if there's any correspondence.
It's very subtle. 2 letters were received from the Trillium Lakelands District School Board and the Ministry of Transportation stating no comments.
I believe that the applicants are present, and I don't know if there are any members of the public as well who would like to speak to this matter before we turn it over to council. For everyone's information, there's nobody in the council chambers at this point, so I'm asking those who are monitoring folks online.
There is 1 member of the public in attendance. If they wish to speak, I'm going to ask that they raise their hand.
All right, and are the applicants present? And I see the applicants actually. Would you wish to say anything in regard to this matter? Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. I got 1 panelist. No, well, that's because Councillor Bocek's keen. So let's turn it over to Councillor Bocek, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to say thanks to Jeff for a very good job on this. This is very complex and very detailed. I had met with Jody and Alden quite a few years ago, actually, and walked the property and spoke to them about what they were doing and thought it was a proper severance and thought that it could be done, not knowing all the EPWs and EPXXs and everything else that are on there. But this has been going on a long time, and I'm really happy to see that you've got it to this point, and I have no reservations of passing this and moving this forward. I think it's a good plan. Thank you, Jeff, for your hard work.
Thank you. Are there any other members of council who have any comments or questions in regard to this matter? Not seeing any other hands raised, I'm going to read the motion. I have moved by Councillor Predko, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved that the Planning Council for the Township of Georgian Bay enacts bylaw 2023-090, thereby amending the Township of Georgian Bay zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended, regarding the township application number Z23-11 for 951 Honey Harbour Road, Bressette, for the subject lands known as assessment roll number 4465030016054001, where the part to be retained is to be rezoned from residential type 1 or R1 zone to the R1 zone environmental protection wetland zone and the EPW exception zone. And the severed is to be rezoned from R1 zone to R1 exception zone, EPW zone, and EPW XX zone. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. I think that this is the last step, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. One would hope.
So until the notice goes out from the clerk's department regarding the passage of this bylaw, the appeal period doesn't start. Once the notice is sent, there is a 20-day period that the applicants must wait until the bylaw is finished, the appeal period, even where we do not anticipate any objections. With regards to the actual consent file, it predates my arrival. I have not examined it to see what other conditions may or may not be outstanding.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have moved by Councillor Bocek, second by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the Planning Council adopt bylaw 2023-091 to confirm the proceedings of the September 12th, 2023 council meeting. All those in favor? That is carried. And I have moved by Councillor Jarvis, second by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved, the Planning Council is now adjourned at 9:15 a.m. until October 11th, 2023 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor?
Actually, Mayor,
It's unreasonable for us to hold a meeting only 15 minutes long. Could we just talk for another hour?
No, we have another meeting.
All in favor?
Your hand was still up, so I consider that carried because we have the pleasure of probably a record-breaking planning council meeting. Not that we have to strive for this all the time, but this was exceptionally efficient. Well,
So do we break for lunch now?
you can do anything you like. However, the next on our agenda is a committee of the whole. Do we want to start that immediately or do you want a 10-minute break?
We go right into it.
We gotta switch places as well.
Oh, we have to link, let's